It's indeed very great pleasure for me to join in this webinar series. This is the seventh webinar is going to be given by Sri Ashok Natarajan, who has been known to all the water professionals in and he worked in many areas. And I would like to briefly tell about him so that those who are not aware of about him. So he is the founder of Study Tabs Consulting Private Limited currently. Earlier he was Chief Executive Officer, Tamil Nadu Water Investment Company Limited, and he was Chief Executive Officer, Environmental Division, United Phosphorus Limited, Managing Director, Hydrocom Enterprises India Limited, and he was a PPP head, Subhas Projects and Marketing Limited, and he was Director and Chief Operating Officer of Sophia Software Limited, and he was the President, Havels India Limited. He was GM, Secure Meters Limited, Manager, Wipro Limited, and Senior Project Engineer, Crompton Greaves, Project Engineer, General Electric Company. So I think he has, I would say that he is a windmill for change our mind with a lot of new knowledge. So he has also having a lot of expertise. He worked with the central government and water boards and ULBs, and also at he was making a big mark on taking the especially with other countries and the learning the especially the lessons learned from other countries so that it can be implemented in India and other developing countries. And he played a key role in making Twig as a solvent company with consistent profit making in the last 7 years. He has been working on, especially on desalination, municipal water reuse, pollution abatement, and capacity building. He is also a domain expert in the central government scheme in the area of wastewater treatment, solid waste, and air pollution for the last 4 years. And he was also part of the expert group on deployment of water technologies from CSIR, Ministry of Science and Technology. So he also involved extensively in Niti Aayog for the past 2 years in the area of water recycling. And he has been in several roles, so it takes a lot of time. So, but I think thank you, Ashok Natarajan, for agreeing to deliver his lecture. And I think this is his own very good experience on the water sector. And I think all the participants will be highly benefited by his lecture. And I am really thankful to you, sir, for accepting in a very short notice. But I think you have been, we have listened to you many times, but I think there are many other young people who needs motivation from you to work in this sector of water and its management. So over to Ashok Natarajan.
Thank you, Professor Mohan, for having me in here. And also my respects to Chandran, Dr. Chandran, Mr. Jagannathan, and Dr. Nupur is also there. And I also find a lot of old friends who have not met, and Mr. Shaktivel and other people who used to be the chief engineer of Madurai Corporation when I did my work about 20 years back there. I could see him in the screen today. I'm so happy about it. Thank you for the opportunity. I would first of all start, see, I am not a classical civil engineer by background, but I got trained in civil engineering by my practical exposure the last 30 years. I've completed about 4 decades of services in both in energy and water, and brunt of my work has happened in water. And that is why I will learn from the fundamentals to really do it. And it's a very proud moment to see that I'm in the august company of people like Professor Mohan, other great people who are all very erudite and having had a lot of experience and especially their own patents in this particular field. I would like to share some of my practical initiatives about especially this topic, which is very, very close to me, which is a passion to me. I've been trying to do it. Mr. Jagannathan from L&T will really vouch for it. For the last 25 years, I'm trying to do it. And I think I'm slowly succeeding. I could see a lot of good companies from India participating and doing it. With this in mind, I just would share my screen, sir, with you. Are you able to see the screen, sir?
Yes, sir.
Just before I start, this is I understand that this is a lecture 7. I just like to tell about this because this is a subject which is not rocket science, but very badly neglected by Indian utilities, primarily our ULBs and other people. I don't like to decry them, but having done so much of work over the last 30 years, I find this is a very big area where we have not got our things right. When you are done so well on source development, in treatment technologies, in other areas like other sectors like energy, telecom, we don't seem to have done well, especially. And that is why I wanted to tell about these experiences. I've almost worked in all the projects that in the last 30 years, the projects that I'll be showing it to you. And why India is not able to achieve continuous water supply, and why this concept of non-revenue water loss reduction is never taught in any school, never actually ingrained into our water engineers background, and what is its relevance today in the country, especially the post-COVID and the future potential. I just thought this is a very apt topic because next month, sir, we are having this World Water Loss Meet at Shenzhen in China. It's all going to be virtually handled, and I'm one of the management committee members of the WLSG, as they call it, as a water loss specialist group. I've been in that committee. I'm probably the only Indian in the committee for the last 5 years. I've not contributed much, but very recently I did a webinar and I told them what is the potential of India, especially the new Jal Jeevan, which is going to come about, and the new Jal Shakti that has been formed. And they were all very motivated. About 100 people from around the world participated. And I thought this opportunity to even tell it to my own fraternity in India is something very important and passionate to me. Sir, as you know, I worked in TWIC. It is one of the first and the longest standing SPV, that is special purpose vehicle, surviving in the country, making consistent profit. You have already talked about one of the key things that I've done over the years, sir, is capacity building. And the last 3 years, I think I'm very proud to tell you that I've taken at least 200 engineers from CMA who have a residual life of at least 10 years in the department, trained them in hydraulics, actual hydraulic modeling. We wrote a curriculum. I was the chief architect of the curriculum, and I brought in very good capacity professors from IIT Madras, as well as for the theoretical part of it. And the practical part of it, it was all done by us, by hand-holding with these 200 people. And then as the culmination of the program, we took them, all the 200 engineers in 5 batches to Manila for a training on NRW. And it really opened the eyes. That you can see in Tamil Nadu for the first time, they are looking at these type of projects. First of all, 9 of the corporations are going towards district metering areas for the first time, even though they are not doing the consumer metering part of it, but at least there is a move and there is a change management that is already happening. So I'm very, very happy. And I brought in a lot of new contract structures like life cycle management of assets is what I brought in. And today, whatever you see Chennai Metro or TOAD coming out with such long-term tenders, it is due to the fact that I've actually ingrained this in the people over the last few years. I retired in July first week, and I've started my own small outfit, and I'm consulting with a few people. Especially I consult with the government of Orissa for all their reforms, and I work closely with them, except that COVID has taken a dent on the travel, but at least they are marching towards the continuous water supply, and it will be one of the first states which will be going towards it, and I'm very actively involved with it. The discussion points that I put towards the August people here today, the audience, is that I want to talk about the challenges in India. What are the new initiatives of the federal government, that is the central government, I'm also part of some of the subcommittees which are there, and I've been with Niti Aayog and UIY for the past 5 years, sir, representing through IIT Madras the program on wastewater and air pollution on that for the last 5 years. What has been India's experience last few years? Key strategies, case studies, some case studies I'll be putting forward with some of the projects which I have been involved right from the beginning, the last 20 years. How to bring in smart water technologies and new contract structures. If you really see, sir, there is a real pressure today on from external environment on water supply. All of you agree to it. Today, quality and reliability has become a very big question mark. I'm not picking any states, but generally, sustainability is a problem. We are not having enough finance to take care of our future growth, conservation, cost effectiveness, and the social demands. The NGOs and other people have become so strong that they are all demanding. Today, I saw for the first time, Professor Mohan, a headline news in Times of India saying that Groundwater Department of Government of India has given a notice through NGT that people who are wasting water, the consumers, will now be fined 1 lakh rupees and more if they find people are wasting groundwater. This is the first big act which has come today. I'm very proud that I am able to start delivering this presentation to you on the very day this was announced. I wish not only they penalize the consumers, but also the major ULBs, utilities, and water boards too, because they need to actually do these practices of non-revenue water reduction. I will also show you some of the figures, what I have actually gathered in my research and in my field work the last few years. So the increasing pressure is there. So today the need of a good city management is to really give 100% coverage of both quantity and quality of water supply. I mean, as per WHO standards, incorporating any of the water sources, like for example, it could be ground, it could be surface water. In the case of Chennai, it could be desalination or even recycled water, blended water also, it's possible. Any part of the world, nobody understands that India is giving an average of 2 hours for water per day. It's all 24/7 at the consumer end, and introduction of demand management measures, primarily through metering and other pressure reducing devices and things like that. And reuse of tertiary water for industrial and commercial parks and things like that. In terms of sewerage, 100% collection and treatment is what is envisaged as per the MOUD guidelines, and automation of the pumping stations and other things. And of course, ICT, what you call as the information control technology, has become very, very important. And that is coming in as the bridge which will integrate and between the technical planning and the commercial function to give a holistic solution. And this is the purpose of any city management. And unfortunately in India, every city of us, 100 large cities or 100 smart cities, are very, very far away from it. So if you really see the utility perspective, water distribution is not equitable. I think all of us, whether in Chennai or any part of India, have this problem. Bulk water production assets have outlived the age. Distribution infrastructure is very old. We take backseat with regard to this oversized network. We are very keen to put very high capex assets by putting a water treatment plant for taking the capacity for the next 100 years, for the ultimate period, or even 40 years to the ultimate period. But we don't attend to the distribution lines. Oversized networks, facilitating entry of sewer into the distribution system. Our sewer network runs below the water networks, and very often there is penetration of sewer due to the air gap which are found. And because of the intermittent supply that we do, it is like sucking the sewer water and poisoning the system very often in many of the cities. Less than 5% of Indian system is metered today. And NRW, I'll come to it later, non-revenue is unknown. Everybody talks, everybody publishes in websites. They say I'm 30%, 25%. CPHO norm says 15%, but no one is anywhere close to it. And the tap pressures are so low. Today, for a city of more than 1 million or 10 lakh population, you need to deliver 17 meters at the ferrule point. And today we are not even able to deliver 1 meter or 5 meter. And above 1 million population, we need to deliver at 12-meter pressure. And we are far from it. And new guidelines are coming on these areas. And that is why the use of technology, use of better water management, use of solid O&M is required, and methodologies are required in this sector. From the consumer perspective, people know that they get only 2 to 5 hours of water. They in fact store the water. Inadequate water pressure, so people resort to hand pumps, boosting of the water from stealing it from the neighbors and things like that. Very many cities in India do that. And they also old water concept prevails. Whatever they store today, they are not sure whether the water is going to come next day. And when the water comes, they throw the old water out. And that is also NRW. And very badly, water contamination, especially due to rusted pipes, leaking joints, is very high. And consumers today have lost the confidence. They all of us take only mineral water. And even though municipalities, I would say even the mineral water people are no good people in terms of supplying the quality of water, but we are forced to it because of the perceptions that have been created. So this is something very, very important. The critical perspectives are source constraints, large distribution zones. We have expanded our command areas in cities so big way. Cities have expanded, cities have outgrown. They have all added up. Chennai from 176 square kilometers have now come up to about 496 square kilometers in the last 5 years. So the geographical areas increase with the same resources, and it is very difficult to maintain the pressure at the tail ends. Leaks and burst, old dilapidated conditions of the pipeline. Collection efficiency, I don't have to talk, it is very poor and not sustainable. Probably Tamil Nadu, Karnataka might have a better collection efficiency, but looking at the base of unmetered supply or unaccounted supply, it will be very, very large. So I would say that still the efficiency is extremely poor, average flat tariff and lack of demand management measures. So if you really see our legacy system, if you really were to do a quick run up, our baselines are very weak. Only now I'm seeing a lot of smart young people coming from various engineering colleges, strong in the areas of GIS mapping, ability to understand technology, integrate them. Our records of baseline is extremely weak. So we become very vulnerable, and we are always considered as a high risk country because our baselines are never clear. Use of district metering, DMAs are never found, PRVs, very little, very few places, and water audit is water balancing is almost non-existent. It's more than water audit, water balancing on a dynamic way is non-existent in our country. Per capita supply is low and poor pressures, and NRW is something more than 50%. I'll come to it shortly. And the cost recovery, all of us know. With the result, the water supplying being intermittent and inconsistent, tanker mafia in many other cities, including capital city like Delhi, Chennai, all have resorted to this. Probably only Calcutta is not practicing is because they are living on the Brahmaputra and such a huge amount of water there, but they don't practice any water management over there, I'm sure, in terms of NRW planning, except they did some few pilots with Sureka many, many years back. Improper planning and poor O&M practice. No real reform has really happened in this sector. Only states like Karnataka and to some extent Delhi has happened. And every other state lags behind. And even many of our neighbors in the Asian countries, especially non-PEM, Cambodia, Vietnam, even Sri Lanka, is far ahead of us in continuous water supply and NRW management. So why I'm saying this is very important, sir? If you see we are coming to almost in Tamil Nadu closure of our lockdown period, but the challenges are going to be very high for our urban local bodies and government bodies, because it is very clear that clean supply of water is the front line of defense. The ubiquitous water supply is the front line of defense. Hand washing today, even today, you might not believe in so many of those sanitizers which come, but all of us believe in disinfecting washing our hands and feet even before we get into the house or anything like that. That is very important, and we can't use stale water. Reliable piped water supply to the consumers today is a perquisite for social distancing and quarantine strategies. Many people with COVID are staying inside today in many houses. And in Chennai itself, I know so many friends who are COVID positive staying within their houses, not staying in hospitals. It is primarily they need, the prerequisite for them is reliable pipe water supply. And the reliability and the quality, whichever city is in India, is still a problem. Infrastructure spending post-pandemic will become very difficult. And like what Tamil Nadu has done, skilling and capacity building is going to be a very major thing. That is what I find that people like Dr. Nupur and other people are doing so much of work through TERI and other institutions in Delhi in terms of skilling and capacity building. This needs to be done at the distribution level also, sir. These are the most important thing. You can get probably good trained, certified membrane operators, but you need to train a water supply engineer. You need to create proper plumbers in the system. And this skill is sadly lacking. We don't have finishing schools like Australia. Even Malaysia has got a very good finishing school. People graduate from there and then only go for other studies so that they are all hands-on in these things. And there is going to be a struggle for finance from everyone, right, from consumers to the government. So innovative cost structures and private finance, it's a subject very close to me. I actually do a lot of work in private financing, and that is one of the areas which will come in, I think, in the new Jal Jeevan. So the Jal Jeevan rural, which has already been started rolling out in Tamil Nadu and all the other states, bigger states like UP, Bihar and all, you can see that one of the key messages that has been given by the Prime Minister is water for all. It was appreciated world over. And they are given a target for the rural areas in 7 years to achieve water for all. So I presume the Jal Jeevan for urban, which will come out in the next few months, will also carry this tag saying that water for all our cities, water for all our citizens in the urban area, which is not available today. So need for water regulators is very important. Today, we don't have regulations in the water sector. I've been a very key, a passionate learner, especially this COVID times. I've been doing a lot of work with OFAT and other people in UK and other countries, how they regulate water, how they penalize utilities, how they penalize service contractors if they don't fail to deliver the targets. And today there is no key performance indicators in this particular sector. You might say we are giving so much of water, that doesn't mean anything. How much of water was lost out of the 700 MLD? Where it was lost? How I can improve upon it month after month? That is the key performance indicators that are required. So the unique challenge in India, sir, is that we tend to operate our wastewater plants as a water reclamation plant. We have learned it from the Singaporeans and other things. And we are trying to build world-class things in the wastewater side, especially after the new CPCB norms of discharge standards. We are getting more modernized and we are talking this language of using the wastewater as reclamation grounds or water factories. But we should also run our basic utility operations properly. That is actually the real bloodline for the citizens and for the utility themselves. And today, unfortunately, utilities don't exist. It is there, the knowledge is there with the plumbers, with the fitters and the linemen who are all long retired. So we do not know how the current operations itself sometimes happens. Operating cost recovery is low and very often intermittent supply, and low commercial and staff morale is also pretty low. So if you really want to invest, if World Bank wants to come and invest, they will be very easy to do a desal plant or a wastewater treatment plant. They are not able to do on the distribution, which is most important for our cities. Why they are not able to do it? Because asset condition is not known. There are no consultants who are able to deliver that quality of consultancy reports or DPR, which stands by itself and says when the contractor comes in for construction, it is exactly matching with what the asset condition is. And if he determines that so many kilometers of pipeline has to be replaced, this is what. So today we are working in a very, very subjective manner. And non-revenue water loss is unknown and capital expenditure is large and not known also. We do not know how many kilometers of the 7,000 kilometers of pipeline in Chennai we need to replace. And poor hydraulic designs is also a very important factor. So whatever we need to invest for the future through the Jal Jeevan or from the World Bank or the multilateral funding, whatever is going to happen. People are not putting their money into water distribution is primarily due to all these problems. We don't handle it professionally. With now the success rate, what L&T has found in the market the last 2 years, and a couple of the multinationals, they have taken a lot of cities to operate, like Coimbatore, like Delhi. I hope things will happen and we will find MDBs, multi-development banks, and other people will come and invest into it. When they're investing so heavily in Bangladesh, in Dhaka water supply on distribution, they're not putting any money into the distribution infrastructure of India, primarily because we don't have any baseline. So the population growth is high, but not clear where the population, whether it will reside in the ECR area of Tamil Nadu, Chennai, where there is no network right now, or they will reside in other newer areas of north of Chennai. We do not know. Where the population will live is unclear. Capital expenditure planning is weak, and divided responsibility, because the cities have become so large and unviable, it has become very difficult. So this is one of the things, whatever small, it's easy to handle. So we did a freewheeling thinking some time back, and a new guideline is expected to come. Apex level committee has been formed under CPHO, sir, just now, and they are actually coming out with these type of, and they are wanting to bring in incentives also, I feel, so that they cover in the new Jal Jeevan for urban. 100% population and a piped water supply is the mission. Just imagine today we are just about 30 or 35% in our sewer system, whole country average. As such, we are having so much of pollution issues, so much of ingression into water networks of wastewater. Just imagine if we were to sewer the whole country, what will happen? If this type of poor workmanship and things happen, what will happen? It will be a time bomb on us. So we need to take a call now very clearly, and that is why pressurized piped water supply is very important. Quality up to WHO standards, and it should all be talked with respect to the individual houses or the consumers, and conversion from intermittent supply to the doorstep supply, performance-based deliverables, and slightly long-term cost recovery. Even in smart city, the government has given a ruling saying that, the central government, when they give the funds, they say, within 5 years, you have to be sustainable in your O&M. That means you should make your tariff and your efficiency of operation should be such that within 5 years, your solid waste or your water network or your O&M of anything should be paying for itself and sustaining and growing. That is why they provided the core capital. And we are today very far away from it. So very important is to make cost recovery in our water distribution. And we also need to have new guidelines under which is expected to come, which will cover NRW in a big way. I'm trying to contribute a lot in that area, continuous and safe drinking water, formation of special purpose vehicles. My company, the earlier company I worked for, the last company before I retired, was a standing example, a loss-making unit becoming such a profitable company, because you have to have holding power. The government also supports it to bring it. And that is why today they have all realized world over, if Vietnam is doing so well, or Ho Chi Minh City or Phnom Penh is doing so well in Cambodia, or Malaysia, there are about 20 people, 18 water concessionaires in Thailand, all of them form SPVs with the government, and they bring in private sector enterprise, innovation, best excellence from around the world, and they have the authorities of the government who are able to take the decision at the hem of affairs and deliver the services. And today that is what is happening. And metering and financing is expected to be shortly announced as well. This is the shelf of projects. I've been tracking all the projects the last 12 years, sir. Jamshedpur is the only city which can claim that they're having a low NRW, and they have implemented a few DMAs in the system in few of the zones, and they are running it successfully over the last 100 years. It was all done by, at that time, Veolia. That company had a different name at that time, which came in at that time and operated the system. And they left about 20 years back, giving the best practices to JESCO, the Jamshedpur utility company. And unfortunately, that company tried to extend their area beyond and going into a ULB like Mysore, and they misread the whole asset mapping in that area. And this project has almost come to a standstill, because whatever proposals they did, the capex that they provided for in the proposal, and they stood L1, was not enough to deliver the continuous water supply to a ULB like Mysore Corporation, which is almost Tala Kaveri. Everything is starting from there, and which is having such a good water supply today is a place where most of the areas are getting water once in 7 days. This is applied, and people store the water in various large sums. And some of the sizes of the sums that the people have in many of our cities, if you take the total volume of it, it will be bigger than the command reservoir in that area. So that is the thing that we have, this type of dangers that we have in the system. Hubli Dharwad is one shining example. Veolia did it many years back, successfully ran it for about 2 terms, 5 years, very well successful, and we paid for itself, both from the utility point of view as well as from the contractor point of view. Today I heard L&T has taken over the entire city, Hubli, Dharwad, Belgaum, and Tumkur, over 4 lakh connections. Extremely great opportunity for L&T to deliver the continuous water supply. It's one of the great jobs that they have won recently. Delhi has started very well with Suez and Veolia there, but after all, the new government which came and changed their policies of giving free water. See, if people were to consume in a family of 4 members in a family 135 liters per consumer daily as per CPHO standards, you can say a family will consume 18 kiloliters per month. And unfortunately, the government of Delhi decided to give 40 kiloliters, first 40 kiloliters free. So all the initiatives that were taken by these 2 big giants, international giants, went down the drain. And today they are still in the business. They are still running the system, but it is in a very slow progress. L&T did a wonderful metering program. I went with the erstwhile MD of Chennai Metro to have a look at the system at Delhi. Fantastically done. The system was so good. It really brought in revenues. The billing went up, but now I think it has plateaued due to the various things. Nagpur is one area which has shown a very, very good resilience, and they have shown real technical and commercial improvement, and they are marching towards, out of 571 MLD, they have almost converted 164 to 200 MLD to continuous water supply, and they have done a very good job. I'll explain more details later because I was involved in the project about 15 years back. I've already talked about Hubli Dharwad, and then you have this famous NRW contracts started by Thames Water, later on by L&T, Suez, SPML. A lot of good work through funding through JICA. It's a very, very good work which has happened, and Mr. Jagannathan is here. I was also one of the pioneers in that earlier stage where we brought in, I was the consultant to BWSSP to bring out these type of contracts. But the NRW contracts which was committed by the state was very, very low. With the result, people are struggling to still reach there. But nevertheless, it's a very good international practice that has been brought into a city. And that is why Karnataka is much ahead of rest of the country. Coimbatore today has embarked on a major program about 1.5 years back. It's been done very systematically, and the pilot areas have shown good progress, and they have been able to regulate the water supply from once in 4 days to almost daily water supply now, and Suez is doing it. Similarly, Pune Smart City is a very large contract by L&T where they are bringing in some of the best world-class technologies there, and I think it is just starting to come into the construction phase. And similarly, Jharkhand, Hazirabad, L&T, and Adityapur, Suez, and Jindal, and Indore by L&T. And a lot of small pilots in and around Maharashtra and Karnataka, which are still not successful. They have been successful initially during the contract period, but are not sustainable. But there is no return of investment in all these projects for the end client. But these are the shelf of projects which I've been able to put in, and I would discuss more in detail at a later stage. So 2 important strategies which we need to know, sir, is in order to reform a utility, in order to reform a water board or a ULB, not only you need to do all the EPC work of changing pipes, elongating, building very high capacity treatment plant, sewering the system, things like that, but you also need to bring in institutional changes. Unfortunately, India still, we are very weak in this area. Institutional reform has not happened at all. Only state where it has happened, at least in paper, is Orissa, where they have formed a separate SPV step-down company called Watco, which will handle all the distribution assets. and they will run it on a commercial basis or cost recovery basis. And they have set up a department, and I am actually helping them in some of their initiatives of institutional strengthening. Similarly, if you really see, the main principle will be to provide sufficient, optimized, pressurized water. So we should have an appropriate legal and tariff network. Consumer awareness is important. Provision of billing, customer services, efficient O&M, institutional strengthening, state-of-the-art information technology. Indians, we are very good in that, and we can really, we actually do what most of the things for around the world. In fact, most of the London utilities are all, back offices are all managed by people like Wipro. Do you know that? All the systems that are done, there are Swan systems, there are companies around the world, intelligent network system, which are all manned by our IT companies in India, whether it is Infosys or people like Wipro are all doing it from Bangalore. And effective utility management, cost benefits, and sustainable methodology is very important. So the methodology is not rocket science. It is not like what you typically see in a treatment thing where you need to know the hydraulic flow. You need to do so much of things, but these are absolutely simple. And that is why people like Manila, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, everyone, and Cambodia have taken it on so well to do the system of continuous water supply so effective. You might say they had sources of water. We also have the sources of water. It's how you manage that properly. So the hydraulic network, piloting is very important. Rehabilitation of distribution mains, house service connections, metering, water management, public fountains, making it accountable by metering, improved system of CRM, SCADA, and active leakage program. This is what is not happening in India. We need to have a proactive O&M management, which is very important. So if you really see the cycle, I don't have to explain this, right from water source to the customer, you see the entire thing on the left-hand side is all this, what is related to the various utilities, and what you see on the right-hand side are the measures that you need to take to make it happen. So in any city, it is like if L&T were to enter into a market, say, how do they go into Hubli Dharwad? They did a study, they did the O&M when I was the consultant of Hubli Dharwad about 15 years back. They entered into a small O&M service contract of Hubli Dharwad with about 100 people. They were manning the headworks. They learned it slowly. Then they understood what was the current condition, what was the desired condition to achieve. And today, they have taken such a massive order of 4 large cities in one stroke because they had superior knowledge and they were able to give a solution which could achieve, which should go near the desired solution of the condition of what the utility wants in the best possible roadmap. And this is what, and normally these projects are 10 years, 15 years. Even to do the study, it takes about a year's time. And any rehabilitation takes at least 28 months to 36 months in this area. So very important is to really quantify the lost revenues. For example, revenues can be leaking due to technical also, poor hydraulic pressures, wrong zoning, non-visible leaks which are happening, background leaks which we do not know, commercial losses in plenty. I don't have to tell, most of the cities are not metered except Karnataka and Delhi possibly, and some parts of Hyderabad and other places. But inaccuracy is very abundant. Illegal, unknown connections, inadequate debt management is a very big thing. So this is the water table, sir, and which was actually brought in by a friend of us in IWA. He's one of our founder members, sir, Professor Mohan, called Ronald Limburger. He actually brought out this water table for the World Bank and EC calculator. And last week, this has got updated, sir. They have brought in the smart system and it has been widely circulated. In fact, I have sent it to the entire committee members of CPHO to try it out, to find if there are any bugs in it. It is like a profit and loss account of any business operation. You have the authorized consumption, you have the billed authorized, unbilled authorized, and the water losses can be divided into apparent losses or the real losses. Real losses are what are the leaks, overflows, and the apparent losses are all your commercial things that are there. And then you zero in on what could be the way you can retrieve and lower these losses in some of these interventions that you do. And this table has got updated recently, last week, and I can circulate it to all of you through Mr. Jayan shortly. I'm sure you would have got that directly, the messages from the IWA. but this is something that they have gone it and they want to launch it in the World Water Loss Day now. What is non-revenue water loss, sir? We talk about it, it is not actually taught in our schools. Basically, it's a volume of water put into the water distribution system and what is billed to the consumers. So really, if you see, it consists of three components: physical, or the real losses, that is due to leakages, commercial apparent losses, and unbilled, unauthorized consumption. So if you really see the real losses, it is the compromised leakages from all part of the system, like transmission leaks, distribution mains, service connections, which are the most vulnerable areas. These are caused by poor operations and maintenance, lack of active leakage control, and poor quality of underground assets. Today, there are no systems today to map our underground assets. And we are bringing out large tenders saying that, okay, replace the whole stretch of pipelines in streets. This is because we are not having these underground investigation things. I will share a few case studies on what I've done over the years. Apparent losses is something caused by a meter under registration. And even though we might not have meters, but our data handling leaves a lot of errors, and theft is also a big problem. Unbilled authorized consumption include the operation purpose water for firefighting. As per CPHO standards, we are supposed to provide for firefighting standards the demand. Unfortunately, many of the cities are not provided with this, and water provided for free to certain consumers needs to also be taken into account. So this is a classic example, sir. If you really see this chart very clearly, what is your UFW, unaccounted for water, is water produced minus water billed. That's only your technical part. Your NRW is actually your efficiency part of your commercial operations of your utility. Water produced minus water paid for. Supposing if you see the websites of almost all the utilities or ULBs in India, they'll all claim UFW as 30%. And if your collection efficiency is the blue line, 50%, you see how your NRW is reflected. It is reflected in terms, it is actually exponentially growing. If your 30% is your UFW or due to your real losses or leakages, your NRW is close to 60%, depending on the collection efficiency graph that you have. This is a correlation worked out by a friend called Dr. Dinos from Hydrocom over the years, and it's practiced as a crude methodology in any of the systems when the people go for bidding for these type of contract. So typically, you need to do a very good network optimization study. We need to rezone, whether it's a green field or a brown field, you need to do all these things: demand analysis, network analysis, rationalization, and then only you come to your zone management and what capital that we need to invest. So that is what people are doing in Coimbatore, or for example in Hubli, Dharwad. L&T will be coming forward with an action plan in terms of a capex plan. They will say, they are given the boundaries in the tender, and they'll say, this is where, if you are giving me 300 crores for the development of city, this is where I'll put. I'll put wherever the return of ROI is there, return on investment is there. Not on just laying whatever we want to do, whatever. It is not like building huge capacity water treatment plants, which will never be used in the next 100 years, but to use it rightly, because you should have a payback period within 5 years time. Anything should have ROI. So you do fixing of leaks, valve rehabilitations, PR valves, chamber rehabilitations, replace house service connection, which is a very vulnerable point. And then if required, you go in for metering. So for all these things, if you really see, you need to measure. If you really see, you need to measure, control, and monitor. And you need to understand that you need to use a lot of ICT, that smart water, digital water. I feel India has got an enormous opportunity, sir, because all our IT companies have been doing this for many years. They are the one who are running the London utility or Thames Water back. Today, we have this opportunity. We don't have the domain expert probably in that area, but today we have all the skill sets. And this is what will take us to the next leapfrog into a next league in water management. And that is what I see ICT to play a very important. I myself specialize in this area a lot, and that is why India will be a global supplier. This is one of the sectors where Indian government will be very proud. We can make everything make in India and made in India. This is the only thing. You can't do it in desalination. You are still dependent on high pressure pumps from outside. You can't buy beyond a certain range of diameter of HDPE pipes are not manufactured in India. So we have to import. Not here. Everything could be done from India as made in India. And that is what I say, ICT will become a very, very important concept. So this is a map which I hold very dearly. In fact, the whole city, if you really see, right from the baseline, if you see the logs maintenance record is your network. It is your network library. Valves, pumping station, receiving stations, PRV, bulk chamber. Then you have your mass balancing zone. On top of it is your land use area. All these things constitute what is called your demand management functionality. Then you have the plots, your properties, your consumers, the consumer. Then you have your appetances like your valves, your meters, your sewer connections and other house service connections and things like that. So everything is related to a business from a source, just like the P&L table or the IWA table that I put into you some time back is all divided into various processes. And these are all not rocket science. All these things are divided into processes of enable demand management, work order management, maintenance management, asset register, demand analysis, design standards evaluation, and everything can be done. Like people like, I believe L&T is coming out with the integrated management information system. I used to be a very big patron for the integrated management there. Centrally, you can actually marry your commercial database with your technical, your hydraulics part of it, and actually dynamically do these things. And that is what we need to do in India. And that is what I say, risk-based master plan is very important. So if you have a finite post-COVID, all our cities are only going to have a finite budget from Amrit or whatever budget is going to come in. So we need to put the money smartly to get the best mileage out of it, or the best bang for the buck that you spend is most important. So you need to actually go deeply into this dynamic master planning so that you allocate costs in terms of all these functionalities. GIS, billing system, asset management, you quantify the cost for each one of them. And then you also do what you call, what could be the expected revenue. For example, Orissa went on a 2 lakh metering opportunity very recently. They floated a tender and they had a lot of struggle to finalize. 3 times there are writ petitions, 3 times the tenders got cancelled. Finally, they have got the thing right by actually going in for the metering part of it. Very important. They want to have control on the demand first. And then they said they will do the other things shortly. So what I'm saying is everything that we do in water can bring in additional revenues or even savings in cost. And this has to be run like that. So what we need to do is all these monolithic ULBs or water boards have to run it as a utility service provider. They should not be run like boards. They should be run like utility service provider. They are meant to be the face of the consumers in terms of giving them service. So the commercial department to speak to O&M, design, corporate, and all these things have to be integrated into an institutional mechanism of people, process, information system with a SOP. So we need to do the planning function in terms of demand forecasting. Everything is happening dynamically. Chennai, for example, or even Bangalore or Delhi is growing at such a rapid pace. And unless we marry between the distribution and the institution, the real effective utility management doesn't happen. I've been trying to do this for the last 20 years, and that is what we have been. I think in India, slowly it is coming and dawning into this. So what we are saying is that the operation maintenance would have to be done in a very, very integrated manner of looking at the preventive, reactive maintenance is what we are doing. We also need to look at preventive maintenance and things like that. Similarly, reduction of water NRW. First of all, you should have your GIS base maps very clearly of your distribution network or even your other assets. And we need to capture this data and actually run this system. Very few cities have got this. I know Bangalore has got it, Delhi has got it, but very few, Chennai has got it, but very few cities are using it to the full potential that they have in terms of what they need to do for network optimization and leakage management. In India, the biggest contributors of these NRW is the pipe bursts, metering errors, overflows, illegal connections. So what we are saying is that you should go into the concept of DMA. This is what is being done world over. DMA is nothing but a district hydraulic area where an area with 1 metered inlet, and it is a separate, hydraulically separate area. So if you have about 5,000 connections in a particular zone with a command what you call overhead reservoir or reservoir coming from another area. That is enough so that you can handle a smaller area better than that. And then you have permanently closed boundaries so that you keep the water within itself, within that boundary itself. This is how it works. It's called DMA1, DMA2. For example, you are forming a hydraulically discrete area, and that is the concept that is being done. Unfortunately, in none of our cities, this concept has been introduced. Only in the 12 cases which I discussed, these have been introduced. Like in Karnataka, in Bangalore, it has been introduced. Like in Delhi, it has been partially introduced. But none of that is why we are not able to manage any of our zones. We are not able to give water to the public. We are not able to give equitable water supply. We are not able to manage our pressures. We are not able to do proactive leakage management due to these problems. So in a DMA area, you'll have boundary walls, circulating walls, you have sluice walls, and each one has got a way in which it will operate. And the methodology, this is not rocket science. Today, all the systems in Manila are run by non-engineers. They do a fantastic job. They get awarded for outstanding work in the way they manage the system. A city with 2 crore population is giving 24/7 water. They have taken a concession from the government of Philippines, and they are very, very profitable company in the stock exchange. They are paying them some 20-30% royalty per year and still having enough profits left because they manage the water well, and the account for each and every little droplet of water is quantifiable. So that is how they run it. So if you really see before the DMA, you have insufficient hydraulic knowledge. Today, we don't have knowledge of our water distribution network. We are not able to do prioritization, and there is leakage control is only passive. Whatever we see as visible leakage, or if a corporator says, what you are doing, there's water flowing, so much of gallons of water flowing, then it is attended to. But it is not, it's a very reactive thing. But in the case of a DMA, the system will take care of the whole thing if you do it properly designed. And pressure monitoring, levels of service, and response time can all be seen. So there are various techniques in this which are being worked. Some of them work in India, some of them don't work in India. But I feel in India, in future, we have to go only for a pressurized system, and that will only give customer satisfaction. It will give clean water. Whichever water is pressurized, there is less contamination in the water. If you supply intermittent water, it collects all the residue left and flushes it. It's like a flushing machine at that time where it is giving all the bad water to the public. So you need to do the good supply management in terms of IT. We don't have to tell about it. All these networks are there in terms of LoRa technology, internet. Even your manholes could be, sewer manholes could all be taken care of in terms of a surveillance and things like that. All these things are available. There is abundance of startup companies in India for this, which we can use. So it should be a centralized operation. I was trained in Berlin about 10 years back in water management, and the whole city of Berlin, it's about such a huge city, is 3 or 4 times the size of Chennai, almost 1,000 square kilometer. Might be they don't have our population, but they are controlled only with the central control station with floaty flow meters. They can map the whole city, everything. And today, people are doing this. There are companies around the world which are specializing in these type of technologies. And in India, it's very easy to replicate. Some of our smart cities have started doing it. And I think full citywide implementation should come. So very important is to have a KPI. We should definitely supply all the consumers with piped water. Very important. 150 LPCD minimum it should be. That is what is as per the norms. But all the big cities in the world like Paris or London are running at 110 or 100 LPCD and still supplying 24/7 pressurized water because they manage the water supply system in such a way. Extent of non-revenue loss, I say you don't even have to go up to 15%, at least 20% benchmark from whatever we have, 50 or 60% right now. Cost recovery should happen. As I said, at least the water supply services should recover within 10-15 years. These are the type of projects one needs to get in, and efficiency is very important. And the quality, there should not be any compromise. So one of the key things in this is if you want to produce continuous water supply, you need to build a utility. You need to build a water factory. It is not understanding that I'm taking so much of intake water and supplying and it is rest is all the problem of the people in the field or the consumers. It is not like that. You have to run it like a well from source to tap. You have to run it like a utility. That is what is important. You have to tolerate some cost uncertainties, very important. That's why I'm coming out with a model towards the end, which I've given it to the Government of India also to try and accommodate it. Boost information accountability and should take care of the urbanization that is happening. All our cities are getting very, very big urbanized. Urbanization is the new growth trend, especially in our state, where the urbanization is almost up to 40% now. And sustainable finance as such should be there. And you can't expect government only to invest. All these projects that we do lends itself to the green economy very well. We are reducing carbon, we're reducing the energy part of it. Leakages indirectly, if you reduce energy loss, energy reduction. So these lends itself to good financial norms. I will briefly come into some of the case studies. I don't have to tell. BWSSB, Mr. Jagannathan is already there, and one of his colleagues had also presented it last time. This is one of the best projects over the last 10 years. Bangalore has tried it. They try to do the conventional methodology of meeting the future demand with a finite source. They bring water from Kaveri in 4-stage pumping. It's a very difficult thing, and they spend a lot of energy cost on it. UFW reduction is what they have tried to do. They have achieved up to 25%, even though the targets were about 16%, which will be very difficult to meet. O&M delivery, slave clean water, and it has been acclaimed that there is an increase in revenue in this project. This is a real showcase of a project of international practice coming in. But now the newer models which will come in will be slightly better than these models, which I will share with you later. Delhi again had this big metering program. In 2005 they started, if you see the chart, 2004, 5, and went up really, the billing, average billing, everything went up. But today it has taken a backseat. But wonderful job done in those days by L&T to really bring in these things and do it. One of the successful or a shining example for us today is Nagpur, sir. Nagpur is a city of 30 lakhs population, and today I told you about almost 200 MLD has been converted out of 571. Half the city has been converted to 24/7. So improving coverage was one of the basic objectives, benefits to the poor, quality and health, no water contamination, service level improvement. What they did was very similar to, they formed a step-down company. They brought in the administrative and the political reforms. They structured it on a PPP principle, which is what I also hold this very well, that it is possible to come out. If the player can come out with a very low investment or no investment, he can even raise the money after he gets the order, so that this can be brought in. And this is one of the classic examples. They did everything, but they didn't have a bed of roses the last 5-7 years. There have been marginal improvements in the technical efficiency and commercial efficiency, but they're having huge problem of sum and ability to put metering. They're having a huge resistance. This was a global tender for 25 years. It was bid on the volume billed, and it was based on technical and commercial, and provision of escalation was very limited. So they also were caught like what JUSCO was caught in Mysore. And one of the good things that happened is they formed a step-down company from Nagpur Municipal Corporation, the owner. They formed a company called NESL, which is 100% owned. This is all world over people have reformed. Manila, Formfem, Malaysian utilities have all, Penang, and everybody has reformed like that. Kuala Lumpur has reformed like that. They formed an operator, bringing in world-class operator like Veolia with an Indian partner, and they actually did this thing 7 years back. You can see the volume build even up to 1920. It is slowly going up, but definitely it's in the forward path, and the volume treated is actually slightly come down, but this is actually the best of times. And the commercial efficiencies, recoveries, demands have all gone up. This is a very significant thing. These are figures of 2019-20. These are all gone up. Similarly, if you see, I might be having an older slide. At least 141 MLD, the build volume, the reduction of NRW has been from 64% to 30%. This is the command areas, and it was a huge city. It was not possible to do everything together, and they had too many resistances. So they actually did a analysis, a Pareto analysis of what with metering, without metering. Without metering, there have been wastage of water, and the recovery will be less. With metering, of course, they're able to find out who are the illegal connections, even though they are not able to regularize them. At least they are able to quantify that, and there is no wastage. there's an improvement in wastage and recovery, and metering theft is more. That shows people are playing with the meters because they are trying to reduce the consumptions, and demand practices will automatically come in like what set in Hubli Dharwad by Veolia Fuel. So they had a lot of challenges in that. Whatever the consultant did, the matching of the drawings were not there. There were collapsing sewers because they run very close to the water pipeline, unidentified illegal connections, and double lines, very common. Most of us place rehabilitation, refuses for rehabilitation. Most of our roads are concretized roads, some of the big cities, and we find people are, the permission, road car permission do not happen, and unregistered layout and encroachments are very huge. I've done a lot of work in Tamil Nadu over the years. So in my tenure of TWIC, I almost devoted myself to Tamil Nadu and Gujarat only. I would like to share some of my live case. I see that there are participants like Mr. Muthu Mariyappan, who's been the former chief engineer of TWAD, very highly regarded. I saw his name in the participants list. I hold him with a very high reverence. And I was fortunate enough to work with him in the initial study in some of the other areas of Ramanathapuram and Thoothukudi. But I can say that I worked throughout the state with my small team. I developed this company of TWIC in urban water primarily with these motives. What we found is you don't have to take it hard, but generally it is service contracts, unskilled workforce work, leak losses and thefts are high, zero metering, existing pipeline inadequate or not clearly known what is the condition of the pipeline, difficult to quantify consumer connections, consumptions, and many streets with low pressure. So the diagnosis was to find out what is the existing assets, what is the condition, what is the system input volume, what is the output measurement, where is the water being lost. And I have done about 27 ULBs in the state, and water balancing pilot strategies were all done. This is a small example. I shared it in a forum with the principal secretary at the time, Mr. Panidhar Reddy, about 5 years back, showing how, taking only the data from the secondary data from TWAD and Chennai Metro, only the urban areas. I'm not taking the rural area. I'm not even taking the extended area of Chennai, just got 7 million population. This is only 4.6 million population. You have minimum average supply of 2,700 almost. And if you take as per the secondary data, 15 and 35% as the losses. And if you apportion them in terms of physical and commercial losses, your total NRW per day is 2,70,520 million liters per year. And if you really see on a daily basis, if you had to convert it, it is something like 741 MLD. If you really relate it to the cost of water, if you really see that your subsidized cost of Chennai subsidizing, because in Chennai we pay the lowest tariff probably after Rajasthan, 45 rupees or something per flat connection. Whereas in other markets, other ULBs in Tamil Nadu pay higher, they pay as much as 90 rupees per month. And even if you say that the industries cross-subsidize with the tariff, in the industries normally give about 120 rupees per kiloliter. But if you average out between small and big, it is about 40 rupees. And so if you say 35 rupees, if you say the same volume of water of 2609, you are saving as much as 1,063 crores per annum. So it is almost equivalent to putting this money back into the system instead of building a new WTP or trying to build a monstrous treatment plant and things like that. You can deliver with this money service to the public. That is what, and it has to be done in a smart, holistic way. So flow measure, one of the problem is insufficient hydraulic knowledge. Flow can be measured only at the water treatment. Even that, the district boundaries don't exist. The flow meters don't work. Limited ability to privatize. Leakage control is very passive and generally low morale. So the leaks are there across the system, whether it is from the physical leaks or due to the commercial leaks. All these things are encompassed into this whole thing. And we try to do the DMA. And today, places like Coimbatore, Tuticorin, Tirupur is becoming a model city because of the industrialization. Tirupur contributes 40,000 crores to the exchequer. See, they say very clearly world over, wherever there is Lakshmi, wherever there is good water. Water is the baseline. See, we put our project called New Tirupur Area Development Corporation of bringing, when Tirupur was getting water once in 15 days in tanker, we put our project 20 years back. Mr. Jagannathan has worked in the project. And we brought daily water supply to the town of 5 lakh population and to the industries, the dyeing units, which were the, they brought in the economy of the state. Today it is contributing 40,000 crores to the exchequer. So the GDP of a country or state, look at examples of Singapore. New water, which is the recycled water as they claim, what you call used water as they claim, has got a premium over surface water. In fact, all the people, the MRO industries, the big precision manufacturers, the chip manufacturers who want to set up shop, demand that water only at a premium. So that is what they are brought in. This is all done through good district metering and this design criteria, and able to look at it as a very important resource and making each and every drop of water accountable. So the DMA design, I don't have to tell all of you, you know it very well, but world over, in fact, today afternoon I was in a few webinars internationally. I can tell you, we are very, very primitive in this area. So people world over have gone to the infrastructure leak index. They have gone towards what they call unavoidable annual UARL loss studies. And they are doing so much of algorithm fitting and big data handling into handling distribution. We are nowhere near it in India. So if we have to wake up, because with huge funding, the Jal Jeevan rural was 3.6 lakh crore investment. So even if some part of the money comes to our city next few years, and if you put this money to proper use, we can deliver to our citizens satisfaction of having supplied clean drinking water. So what we did in my earlier tenure was to develop our own systems, because we need to have efficient, low-cost systems. We don't want to import things. So we developed these sensors and things. There are hundreds of people today doing it, and I'm also helping a few companies post-retirement. We did this study for the smart city T Nagar. Unfortunately, the water tender came out and it got dropped due to lack of budget. Every conceivable technology in the world. T Nagar is the commercial place within the city of Chennai, 7 square kilometer only. And we did this study and we said about 19 district metering, and the pressures will range between 13.5 to 18 meters at maximum, because there's a ground level highest lowest difference was there, and the network was about 169 kilometers. So we divided into various things. We did the GIS based surveys of consumers. We did a LIDAR survey of the road. We did the leak detection in terms of understanding the condition of the pipe, and people refused to believe it, because they said even at 2 meter pressure, right now it's only 2 meter pressure, hardly water fills into the sump. The losses are at 45 points. This is a breakdown of the IWA water table. You can see, I don't have to read it. You can just see by yourself. And if you had to pressurize it, now the smart city with less than 1 million population would have to deliver at 17 meter pressure. Just imagine what will be the leak. It will be double. So you can just imagine that is the reason we need to go away from it. And then we did a lot of underground, and we found all the pipes were choked. First of all, the flushing of the pipes, spending money, O&M on that, some money will help us to relieve the water and get the water supply properly. We did CCTV surveys, and first time we quantified the pipes as per international practice in terms of because it's an old city. It is about the installation start 70 years back before the British era. And then it was done also as recently as 10 years back. What we found is some of the older pipes, 70 years, the crown was so good. And we quantified the pipes in terms of C1, C2, as per the international norms in terms of repair, critically planned, average, can live life some more. So we quantified, and out of the 170 kilometers of network, we said you replace only 18 kilometers, and that you will be able, and if you do a program of DMA and metering at the consumer side, you will get your return of investment. Whatever the 100 crores odd you will get in 18 months, you'll start paying for itself. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the budget and it's got dropped. Similarly, we have done Trichy, I've done in my tenure, and I believe this has now come out as a tender now, which is due with CMA in the next couple of weeks. Thoothukudi is one area We did the entire citywide NRW for 4 lakh population over a period of 3 years, and we quantified it and did it. These are what I have done and what I've initiated out of my passion. This business did not exist in Twic before this. I did it in my company at that time. And an area of 90 square kilometer, we divided to, and today they couldn't get the budgetary support, but they are bringing out small. There is now ordered on the DMAs and SCADA for about 60 crores and things like that. So that is now happening. So the very important recommendation for me is that we don't even have to ape the Western world, which is very advanced compared to us. We won't even understand if we sit in some of the conferences of how they are doing it. But at least in India, we can do a simple, it's not rocket science. We need to do survey. We need to do the modeling. We need to do the DMA design properly. From my side, we are trained as much as 200 engineers on hands-on for 5 days in modeling. We spend lakhs of rupees and we give them a freeware of WaterGems platform to play with that. Bring that data of each of the ULBs and come and play, and we give them a test at the end of the day. We say, just draw a network, show us how you draw it, how you put the pressure points, how you allocate the nodes. We tell them to do it hands-on. And then establishment of second stage was DMA, actual field work, active leakage control, and water balance. So very important is to do all these initiatives in a reform agenda. Topographical survey, GIS, pipe condition. I want to tell you, in India, we are very poor in this. We do not even know. In the world over, there is something called free swimming technologies available. Any large pipes above a certain diameter, they put inline pipe condition monitoring. We don't do that in India. Then we then say this calculated risk will replace 40 kilometers, 80 kilometers, like that. Whereas you will be requiring, like T Nagar I showed, out of such a old network, 170 kilometers, we have to replace only 18 kilometers. Very, very small. Hydraulic model, and that too not in a stretch, at different places across the city. So hydraulic modeling, DMA, pressure management, called SCADA. So the very important is to design the IoT-based system in terms of overhead tank control, district metering area. These are some of the areas I'm working on it right now. I'm actually developing products of this, using my knowledge of electronics into this and my past knowledge. So very quickly, you will see that these type of products will be coming into the marketplace, I hope. And we are trying to do some small pilots of it into that. Because typically, if you go for all these standard vendors, they are very, very expensive. And today, there's no realization in water. It doesn't pay. And all of our authorities said, just knock it off, saying that there's no accountability in this. So I decided to do something grounds up and do it. And very important is these models that have been there. The concession model is been there for many years. It has failed in the water system. Even my company, earlier company, was a classic failure. We were loss-making company in the red, and then government bailed us out, and we became extremely profitable the last 5 years. But this is not private sector or people coming from outside do not have any risk appetite of our country. Their ability to understand our baseline and all is saying that nothing exists. So today, so India is a very high risk country. So this concessions will not work really. The lease contracts, which have been working for a very long time, simple, provide service. There's no accountability here. He continues to do this bad job, but most of our schemes and water schemes in any state is all let out to all these small service contractors, and they spoil the system very badly. The point is that the bigger ones don't come up because it's too risky or will charge high fees. And the management contract, which is being tried out now in various parts of some of the projects I mentioned, there is no utility still because they're divided responsibility, and the turnaround time, you can't achieve everything in 5 years. So it requires a longer term and longer time to be given to know a lot of unknowns are there. And you have to get a private sector investment and the private sector involvement in a high way. And that is very important. And government is not convinced with the efficacy of these management contracts at all. So I've conceived this saying that we should have a two-pronged approach. One is a performance-based contract because we are dealing with so many variables underground to manage a city. So you should have 7+3 phases. First phase is to build a utility. That should be the way it should be done. And the contractor is given a management fee and access to capital to meet service targets. So he brings his variations of cost efficiency model and performance efficiency models within that 5 or 7 years time. It is applicable wherever there is low recovery and there is a very large viability gap, which is not, the government is not able to quantify, and relatively the service levels are very poor. And the city wishes to keep the assets in their control. That is, they going to be the owner. The other one is the joint venture partnership. Like what I have done in my earlier companies to marry with the government, where government takes a smaller role, but they take a pivotal management role by creation. That is what Nagpur has done. They take a new water utility partly owned by the government and majority by the private investor. A new company can access concessional finance. So we could raise concessional finance and bail the company out, and that is what we say. And the viability gap in the funding can be closed, and the city is willing to take long-term measures in this. So if you really compare between the traditional model and the performance-based model, I have told you now, like people like L&T, Veolia, and Suez are all doing this, but there are very few Indian companies coming forward. They are not able to do all these things, unfortunately. And Indians are so good in this. I don't know why we can't do it. And build a utility is not specified in the traditional model. Here it is mandated. You have to bring institutional structural changes. Governance structure should be. Performance indicator is very weak. Here it is good, focuses on delivering the household with 24/7 pressurized water. Capital efficiency is not controlled by the guy, the service contractor or the operator. And generally the funds are not adequate and no incentive is there. Here the capex will be controlled by the JV company which comes in. Large fund infusion can happen. Strong incentives to maximize benefits could happen. And long-term sustainability is too short a period. Normally these projects are only 1 year or 5 years maximum. This is slightly wrong. So incentive to do well is there, and the motivation is there from the operator. Serve a growing market. Inadequate finance is there, whereas capex funds can be used and external funds brought in. So this is what the model that is conceived. It's a full service company. You need to manage the company, and there used to be a city water utility created by the government as a step down company. And then you have the customers and you have the auditors, so that too much of profit or tariff change is not brought in. And generally, you need to infuse capital as it comes in. And that is what I say is a holistic thing. And this is what I wanted to tell you in this time. I hope, Jayan, I had kept up my time, or I've stretched a bit more. I do not know. But I think, I hope this brings to the end. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. In fact, thank you very much for a very detailed presentation. I mean, there are a couple of questions that
yes,
the
yes,
participants have asked for. So I'll just go one by one on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first question is about the non-revenue water reduction and the water quality indices. Especially with the case of Indian cities in the projects where I mean these projects are taken up in Jamshedpur or in Karnataka. Do you see a correlation between NRW reduction and the water quality indices?
Very much, sir. It's very much correlated. The water quality, see, once you give a pressurized water supply itself, the quality will improve. And they are putting a lot of online monitoring. These are very inexpensive, but a utility, for example, a TWAD board cannot tender this and get it. Whereas a private person, when he is there, he is able to make these loggers. So there's online monitoring system, and the residual chlorine or whatever is very, very clearly mapped. And I have seen in almost all the cities, in Jamshedpur, people are drinking out of the tap. If you see beyond Jamshedpur, all the people, there is infiltration of nitrates in the groundwater. So you can just imagine. It is really, I'm surprised that we are not able to, in all these cities, slowly you'll find wherever these 12 odd projects are going on, I see very strong correlation of quality improving, even surpassing the quality standards, provided they are inherent having a good source of water, and they take care of the aquifers or whatever sources of water properly. They need to bring in these interventions, and the quality has really improved in Karnataka and other places. In Bangalore earlier, the water quality used to be quite bad. but now it has improved quite a bit after this big program that they took over the last 10, 12 years. Similarly is the case with Nagpur. And one of the key KPI for the contractor who comes in, sir, is he's paid only as per this. For example, in Coimbatore, Suez has brought 20% of the capex investment and they get paid over 20-year period. Unless they deliver good quality, it's all measurable on a daily and a monthly basis. Unless they reduce the NRW, they bring about billing volume higher, and they bring about better uptime in the system and customer satisfaction, they are not paid for that particular area or the sector. So these are all very tightly knit programs. So definitely water quality has improved.
Thank you, sir. And we have the second question. This question, it's again a question on the Indian context. So what is the share of water tariff in supporting the O&M cost of the water supply? I mean, based on the projects that you have seen, especially in India.
So it's a very big subject, but I can tell you in short. In Tamil Nadu, for example, because I think most of the participants are from here. Most of the participants are here. What I'm saying is that in Tamil Nadu, the industries, it's a highly urbanized, industrialized state. It's the industries which are cross-subsidizing. You know, we charge as much as $145 per kiloliter for the new connections. Existing connections, we charge as much as 120 rupees per kiloliter. And certain schemes like Tuticorin and other places where the consumers have paid the capital for the laying the pipeline, they are charged as much as 75 to 80 rupees or something like that. So the cross subsidy happens. See, what I'm saying is, even if you have the flat tariff, if you make your water balancing correctly, if you take dynamic water balancing by proper metering with the production and in the consumer metering, people still, and if you tell the people that you are willing to pay, Chennai people, for example, I'm paying only $45, irrespective of the volume I consume in my sump. So I'm willing to pay more. If they tell me they can give me 2 hours of assured supply every day and where from it is coming, it's possible. And people will be quite willing to pay. What I'm saying is only in Tamil Nadu and in Rajasthan, but Rajasthan has handled it beautifully. What they have done, rest of the other places, they have got what they call as the volumetric tariff. See, they have kept the lower, even if you keep up to 20 kiloliters at the lowest rate, even at $45, it will have annualized, it will come to about 45 to $60 per month. If you keep that and increase those portions proportionately or exponentially after that consumption, all this management, if you do, it's possible. That is how Karnataka is managing. That is how Rajasthan is managing. Rajasthan has also gone in for massive metering now. They're all managing it like that. And unfortunately, their source of water is pretty poor and they are dependent on the groundwater, which is extremely bad. But still, I feel that they are doing a wonderful job of it because they are able to do this difficult part of it and they are able to bring in those extra revenue from the commercial and the other customers of it. And they're still subsidizing domestic consumers. So it's very important that, it's not one solution for any city. It has to vary from city to city. For example, tariff in Tambaram, the outskirts of Chennai beyond the airport, is different from Chennai city itself. You are aware of it, I suppose. It's different. It's double. The flat tariff is double. So it has to be, you have to work out a financial model. And then, there is something called, in India, we don't have this quantification. There is international parlance talks about liters per consumer daily. We have to map it very, very aggressively. You have to know each and every consumers, their patterns, their drinking pattern, their bathing patterns, and you have to know everything about this so that you can give them the optimized water. Today, what is happening in electricity, you see, you will notice this. UP, states like UP, which is difficult state, have gone for smart meters. I am very much aware of what is happening in the electricity also. They have gone for smart meters with HES capability, HES technology. HES means it's only with a few people in the world. They can shut off customer, even a single customer, from a transformer pole. If the customer, if I'm saying that I'm only consuming, I'm 4 people, I'm consuming 135 liters, I should not consume more than 18 kiloliters per month. If I were to extend that, they can cut off. Today, there are technologies available. In water too, we can easily do it. And the customer will understand that his requirements are a lot more and he should pay for it. Say, if it's similar to your internet bandwidth, you are paying so much to get a good bandwidth of a fiber. And you are willing to pay, especially in the COVID times, you are willing to shell out of the money to get quality services. People will pay for it, but services has to be delivered first. No? You have to go and give your KPIs. You have to make a customer charter. You have to publicly announce it. Not saying that I will deliver at your doorstep in this pressure. That is what is required.
Okay. So now we go on to the third question. So, this is a very pointed question, and it is: what is the range of the cost per connection? Cost per connection to get a 24/7 water supply. Can we affix a number for the Indian context, sir?
Yeah, for the brownfield, I assume that most of the cities will get rebuilt or rehabilitated. The thumb rule is something like 10,000 rupees per connection. That includes the meter. I am not a patron for all these ultra modern meters, AMI and all those things. Simple meters with house service connections, with a good command area, with a district metering area. Roughly, it comes to about roughly 10,000 rupees per connection. It can even go down drastically, provided there are good bylaws. Today, around the country, the last 25 years, I worked in very small places like Nanded, Hubli, Dharwad. I worked hands-on. That's how I learned water management. I'm not a profession from civil engineering sector. I learned it in a hard way. All I can tell you is that it's possible to change. And when Karnataka, and you look comparison, what is Manila or GDP, what is the earning capacity of Manila or a citizen of Phnom Penh? They all pay 100. Even the king, the dictator pays. 99.9% is the collection efficiency. I have all the statistics. I had gone last year with our additional chief secretary there to study that for 3 days. And in fact, I'm helping one of my friends who's writing a book on that to showcase to the world how this can be done. A poorer economy is doing much better. Leave alone Singapore. Even Sri Lanka is doing much better in this area. So what I'm saying is that we need to reform now. So long, I'm happy now big people like L&T and all have taken a step forward. But people in India, we are all very good people in terms of treatment. We want to go for zero discharge technology, pollution, all fine. You have to protect the economy. But you're not giving the lifeline for the people. Where will all these things exist without giving the lifeline? And where will all the extra capex come in to feed all the things? It's not an endless thing, people giving it. That is why, the government of India, seeing all these things, have started implementing schemes on the rural side. The Jal Jeevan Rural is more than 2 years old. You know what is allocation for places like Tanjavur district? You'd be surprised. 10,000, 15,000 crores. They are telling me every day. Sometimes the collector tells me, I want a low-cost technology, Ashok, to read remote when the reservoir is getting filled up, how low-cost technology. So these are all innovations which we can bring only from India, not from aping the Western world. It's all possible.
So now we move on to the fourth question, and this question here they ask for a breakdown. So the question is this: could you give a typical breakdown of the NRW total in any of the city that you have worked in? Losses at the intake and the wastewater, the water treatment plant, raw water transmission and the pure water transmission onto the service reservoir to the ferrule to the individual customer connection. So in these 4 stages, what is the typical breakdown that we generally see in Indian context?
Sir, I'm giving you only a thumb rule. All my experiences are very old, and NRW is something, water balancing and NRW is something that is dynamic, it changes. What I'm saying is a thumb rule. If your volume is 100, you are losing, you are losing at your headworks in your transmissions as much as 5 to 7 to 10%. You are left with 90. The water that reaches the end consumer due to various other wrong zoning, pressure losses, and talking about an average, many people say it is not like that, they will refute. This is what all the international water management people, even in the water group, they never take a chance in India, saying that we can never read India. That's what they thrown up their hands. It's because what reaches is as much as our collection efficiencies are nothing. What is the percentage of the operating thing is hardly 25 to 30% is what is reaching. Our losses in some of the cities are so high, either at the treatment or beyond the treatment, master balancing reservoir, from there to the command reservoirs, losing, then pumping losses, then the losses in due to the leaking reservoirs and things like that, and the distribution, and tremendous losses at the house service connection level. That is why the simple technique today is to replace all the house service connection, but it's the toughest task, because when you actually go to replace it to a house where concretized stuff, most of the big urban areas, they'll have independent houses, they will have concretized the whole thing. They're not allowed. In Delhi, people had problems to implement meters. They just will not allow people to come and replace with a new ferrule or a new house service connection and a meter. So what I'm saying is hardly the losses are average of 60 to 70% across the country, sir. I am not saying Jasko, Hubli, Dharwad, all might be much lesser. Bangalore might be 20, 25. Not everything is 25 Bangalore. There are some DMAs. There are more than, I think, 160 DMAs working in Bangalore. Some of them are as high as 50%. You can ask Mr. Jagannath. Some of them are more than 50%. Some of them. It's an active process. You can't do it all of a sudden. It is a process that needs to be followed. But unless you take the steps to create the process, today you're not even creating that. First time in the state, after me getting into it for the last 7 years, we have brought DMA concept to the state. 9 corporations are reforming to the DMA concept. That's the first step. They have given orders to the contractors. They are yet to implement. Some people are saying, I won't implement. I have to make so much pipe changing. I have to see wherever you have to work on an old network of chambering pipes, making the feeder mains. It's a very difficult job in the field. But a good person, that is why you need operators. You will not allow your treatment plant in IIT to be operated by any Tom, Dick and Harry. You will have qualified people, train them. Similar is the case. You're not looking after that. You're allowing this to be done by some service providers, which is the dangerous thing.
Okay. Thank you very much for sort of a very patient answering all these questions. I'm sure there are more questions, but in concern with the time, we feel we are wrapping up the Q&A session, sir, and I'm once again thanking you very much.
Thank you,
now Professor Mohan wants to have a word. So I'm just canceling the spotlight video, and now Professor Mohan will be on the video.
Yeah, right. Sir, it was really a wonderful thing, and I think you can see from the chat box, everyone has really appreciated, and I also learned quite a lot from your presentation.
You, sir. Thank you so much.
And appreciate your way of sharing all your knowledge. But I think the time is not enough. I think definitely we will have some more time. But one just a small thing that I feel now, rocket science is easier than the water science.
Correct, sir. Correct. That is
so, now water science is more difficult because it changes from time to time, place to place, and so on. So I think rocket science is one science. So anybody can start work on it. So I think thank you very much for really within all the time. You have made a lot of effort to give all the things to the people. I just wanted
now. I will welcome Dr. Chandran to give the last word of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jayan. I think it's a very nice evening. Almost 1 hour 45 minutes is running, but in spite of that, we are seeing everything is really more informative. I don't want to take much time at this point. As Sir told, India, we are having a lot of challenges with respect to the water utilities, operation and investment. One point, as he said, it is very important that we have to look into the asset management and rehabilitation. That is very important. We have invested so much. Can we really manage it? Number 2 is about the ULBs are suffering with respect to the sustainability because the poor pricing. That's what he said. Somebody in the chat box is willing to pay 10,000 rupees per month if they are assured with the water for that, because the same money we are spending for the pumps and everything. So ULBs, if they ask money with the measurement is the best way is measure and manage. That is also not what we are not doing. But one data really, it's really struck me a lot is 741 million liters per day. If you are giving to 100 liters LPCD, you can feed 75 lakhs of people, and it is 50 liters. We can go for 1.5 crore. Really, thank you very much, sir. Really, you have opened a lot of points for the discussion. As chairman said, the box is filled. I request Jayant to share all the details that is somebody want to contact and he want to work with, sir. You can share all those details from there, and you can also type the Ashok sir's email ID at there so that anybody is looking can really take care of it. So more than 3 decades of experience speaks. Really, we feel very proud to have you, and we want you to have the second innings with respect to the capacity building. That's what
Thank you.
It is the challenge. Capacity building is the biggest challenge. You have trained 200 people, but I think India, we need at least 2,000 or more than 20,000 people in this domain. So thank you very much for spending this evening, sir. I would like to thank you once again, along with the IWA Executive Committee. I thank the chairman for exactly identifying the right person for this evening, because whatever the IWA office and the others are just supporting when he is identify the person and we are making it to happen. But he is the person behind the continuously 7 lectures with different people around the world. Thank you, chairman, for all your efforts for making this IWA very effective. Now I find so many people. I would like to thank Sri Saitan Singh, Government of Rajasthan, PhD, Nanak Nanak from UNICEF, Muttumariappan sir from TWAD, Mr. Armugam sir from CMWSSB, Mr. Pankaj Kumar Sampath from IDFC, Prasanta Mohapatra from Water Corporation of Odisha, Robert Gaskin from Rudy Consultants, R.K. Jain from Central Water Commission, and Vijay Natkar, Chairman, Pune Chapter of Consulting Civil Engineers, and Jacob Chandapillai from FCRI Palakkad, and Dr. Abba from NEERI. Really, so many people. If I missed anyone, please kindly excuse me. Apart from that, I'm happy to have the vice chairmen, both Jagannathan sir and Nupur ma'am, and other members of the IWA Executive Committee. So thank you so much for joining this evening. I would like to thank almost 115 participants, mostly students and the practicing engineers. Probably we are really marching in the right direction for the needy knowledge that required for the revamping of the water sector and making it more efficient. Thanks for everyone, the IWA office, Jayan and others for making it with all the communication to the members and everything. Natarajan sir, we got more than 250 registrations, but I think we stuck with 125. It is a good number, and people stayed for a long time because of your delivery and the content. Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.